Good evening, Wilmington. The meeting is now called to order. This is a joint finance and economic development community development meeting and community development and urban planning meeting. So it's a joint meeting today, and it's Monday, July 8th, 2024. I am the Finance Committee Chair, Councilmember Chris Johnson from the 7th District, and my colleague, Councilwoman Maria Cabrera, will be sharing the community development portion of this meeting as we move through the agenda. At this time, I'll call to order, I'll do a roll call for the Finance Committee first. Vice Chair Harley, 4th District.
Present.
Councilmember Bracy at large. I have you on as
Present.
Zoom. Okay.
Present.
Councilmember Field, 8th District.
Present.
Councilmember Oliver, 3rd District.
Present.
And Council President Congo.
Here.
And also have with us Councilmember Brigida Fields, 5th District.
Present.
And Councilman Spadola at large.
Present.
All right, and then leave Chairwoman Cabrera. I don't know if you wanted to do the roll call or if you needed me to do it. I can just do it.
I can do the roll call. Thank you
Okay.
for acknowledging me.
The floor is yours, Chairwoman.
Thank you. Well, let's start with, President Congo is present. Councilwoman McCoy. Councilwoman McCoy. Great, thank you. Councilman Vincent White. Councilman Spadola, we know is present. Councilmember Brigida Fields.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, you have to allow them to say present. That's not how it works. I'm sorry. Go ahead. But you're supposed to let them just say present, even if you know they're there. That's not fair.
Councilmember Spadola.
Present.
Councilmember Fields. Brigida
Present.
Fields. Councilmember Nathan Field.
Present.
Councilmember President Congo.
Here.
And those are the only members of my committee, with Councilmember White being absent. Thank you.
All right, very well. And remember, as we have the two different joint committees for all items that require a vote, please make sure that only those committee members for that particular committee are voting and making motions, okay? And with that, I will then move to the agenda. And the first two items are Finance Committee items only. Councilmember Oliver?
Yes, Mr. President, Councilwoman Fields will be reading my ordinance because I'm going to be in and out. I'm still working, so I just wanted to let you know she will be reading the Public Works. If I'm not on here, I just wanted to make a note of that.
Okay, all right, very well.
Thank
And actually, I probably said it in reverse. The first item is actually, it's CDUP. So the first item is a CDUP item. This is ordinance 24-011, which is an ordinance to amend Chapter 42 of the City Code relating to permits for certain residential property owners for the use, install, and maintenance of curbside charging cords in electric vehicle substations. So this is my ordinance, but I believe we do have someone from the administration here. I believe Ms. Stephanie Mergler and Ms. Cora Castle. Please join us. And before we go into to Ms. Mergler, Ms. Castle, I really appreciate everyone in this effort. This has been a long time coming with the EV working group. This was somewhat controversial legislation where we even led up to the establishment of the working group, as unfortunately the city had no working policies to permit the use of charging cords. And as being a 21st century city, we have to deal with this. and very few cities have gotten this right. So I hope we are moving in the right directions. I'm very hopeful with what we see, that we can continue to revise these policies as EVs become more prevalent in all of our neighborhoods. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Mergler to talk about some of the details, and of course, Ms. Castle, the floor will be yours next.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, council members, for having me here to discuss Ordinance 24011. If you go to the next slide, please. Okay. So this ordinance outlines changes proposed by an electric vehicle working group to an ordinance 23027, which originally created a permitting process for the installation of residential electric vehicle charging stations in the public right-of-way, or the use of level 1 charging cords across the public right-of-way under certain conditions. As that ordinance has already been heard in committee, I will simply outline the changes proposed by the working group. The working group was created by Resolution 23051. It included 7 members appointed by the administration and 6 members appointed by council. We met over the course of 4 public meetings in the fall of 2023 and proposed the following changes to the original ordinance. If you go to the next slide, please. Okay. The first few changes were simply changes to definitions or corrections of omissions in the definition section of the original ordinance. So the first couple of changes simply kind of clarified the definition of a level 1 and level 2 charging station. And also included a definition of something called a frequent operator of an electric vehicle, which was something referred to in the original ordinance but was not clearly defined. The following 2 changes were much more substantive. The first creates a sunset date for the use of the level 1 charging cables that run across the sidewalk. The group agreed that those are not necessarily best practice. They present certain safety challenges, so tripping hazards or electrification issues. However, installing a charging station in the public right-of-way could be cost prohibitive for most of our residents. It could run in the couple of $1,000 to $5,000 range. Allowing the use of charging cords will open up the EV market to a lot more of our residents until we're able to establish a substantial EV charging infrastructure throughout the city. So that we considered kind of a necessary evil. The use of them is heavily outlined in the original ordinance. It requires residents to come in and read a manual, sign a manual about the actual safe use of them. To ensure both ADA compliance and safety for residents. But we would like to create a sunset date of July 1st, 2030 to phase those out or reevaluate at the very least to see if we want to continue to allow their use. And then the second couple of changes. The first in section 42-248 clarified. So in the original ordinance, we allowed for renters or people who did not own a property to apply for a permit to put a charging station in front of their residence, regardless of whether they owned that residence. The group agreed that we needed to clarify the responsibility for that charging station and ensure that the owner of the property had the same level of responsibility for that charging station that the renter did. So say if the renter leaves, that the owner ensures that they have responsibility for all liability and for removing the charging station, et cetera, that so they are essentially now considered a co-applicant under the ordinance. And then finally, the other major issue we discussed, subsection C2 of 42-248. In this case, so the original ordinance prohibited people from applying to place a charging station in the public right-of-way if they already had access to off-street parking. So say if you already had a driveway or garage, you could not apply to put a a charging station in the public right-of-way across from your house. The group agreed that that was potentially unfair. So say if you owned more than one electric vehicle and you only had one parking space, or if you just simply weren't able to access your own, off-street parking, that we would create a variance process that would allow the Department of Land Use and Planning to review the conditions, and under certain conditions would allow for that permit to be processed. So those were the major changes discussed by the working group. Those are only the major changes. There are a few other minor wording changes, but those were the big ones. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Just one question, Ms. Mergler, about the definition under 42-248 about sufficient parking. That's not a defined term. So would that just be up to, I guess, the zoning board as to what is sufficient parking?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
Yes, I think they will have to outline the actual specific, probably come up with another ordinance outlining the specific variance process.
All right. Very well. All right. And I guess this question is maybe for you, Ms. Castle. I know you were the public member working on the working group. So in terms of the changes, from a public perspective, do you believe the changes now give us a working system that we can have going forward?
So is the question, do these policies produce relief for Wilmington residents?
Yes. Move us forward.
To a certain extent. I wouldn't say that the changes that were agreed upon and by the entire working group. First, I want to thank the City Council and the committee members for allowing me to speak and be involved in this process. As many of you know, I was the original author of the state legislation which leads us here today. So the legislation does several things. First, it creates a controlled process by which city residents can apply for a permit to use an extension cord, which is a practice that is commonly used today across the city. Everyone here is very, very familiar with these extension cords. And as mentioned, we create that sunset date so that we can attempt to place some form of limitation on the use of these cords, which everyone recognized on the committee and is widely recognized by the entire industry as not best practice, because it is not a safe practice. But the first thing is that it creates a process by which Wilmington residents would sign up for a permit to use a cord. So they'd have to at least register to do it. So that's a suitable short-term control. Unfortunately, it doesn't actually it doesn't create relief for EV owners. So what the ability for EV owners to use curbside extension cords provides the ability to charge at an impractically slow pace. We did prevent the use of faster cords. Those cords tend to be larger in diameter and would present more of a safety risk for people who are walking in the area and for other areas. And for other reasons, we restricted the extension cord usage to basically low current. Where I think my sense is that where the legislation falls unfortunately short or the amendments fall short, is that it does not provide a pathway for municipal residents to receive a commercial service for curbside EV charging, as very few people would own an electric or own any vehicle. For instance, if you had to pay for your own gas pump, and not only that, you had to pay to remove the gas pump if you moved addresses. So that is actually what's cooked into the modifications that were being presented. So those expenses are impractical. I don't expect many city residents to take advantage of the ability to install a curbside level 2 charger. But it is, the updates are beneficial in that it creates a safe haven for residents who have been using extension cords previously to continue to use them at least for a fixed period of time and give the municipality an opportunity to find commercial opportunities to work with commercial entities to provide service in much the same way that, you know, professional gas stations provide fueling service for municipal residents. So it
thank
is my
you.
hope that the municipality would look to do something a little bit more forward-thinking in the future to look for opportunities to work with both
that's-
residents and private industry.
And thank you much for that rundown, Ms. Castle, because that is kind of what is going to dovetail into my next question is, you know, obviously this is step one, right? You know, setting up these charging or curbside cords. So is step two us exploring and maybe, I guess, recreating the working group to look at how can we put larger charging stations either in parks or garages, or is that kind of what we're looking at?
If I
as-
may?
Yes, Ms. Margaret. I'll have you
Yes,
answer first.
absolutely. We are currently working on that. This is obviously a major policy issue, and so something we definitely want to ensure that we get right. We are working with Energetics, our electric vehicle consultant, to develop a policy on commercial vehicle charging stations. So far, it's only an internal working group. We hope to expand outward soon once we have a baseline idea of where we want to go. We've met with an extensive number of other cities, talked to the state of Delaware as well. So we are in the process of crafting an initial policy, and then hope to, start soliciting public comment after that.
Ms. Castle, is that kind of where you see the future? And step two is
Yeah, for
working
sure.
towards commercial?
There is no practical solution that doesn't involve some form of commercial relief that relieves city residents of the burden of the cost of installation and maintenance of that's reasonably expensive equipment, especially because if they're also burdened with the expense and inconvenience of having to remove those stations if they change addresses, it's simply impractical. There has to be a commercial solution. And in my view, I have been working in this space pretty extensively, as many of you know, for many years, since 2019, in fact. And all of my private research suggests that any solution that does not provide the means for a EV owner to charge their vehicle where they live is simply unfair. It basically creates an unfair situation where a person who owns more expensive property that has a garage or a driveway, some form of off-street parking, they have some form of inherent benefit and inherent access to this cost-saving and frankly improved form of transportation. So our communities that don't make nearly as much money, that have lower home values, they're basically just going to get left behind. So there has to be a pathway towards commercial curbside charging, in particular for our lower income communities.
All right. Any other members of the committee? Councilman Spadola?
Thank you. Good evening. So this is for both of you. I'd love to hear your slightly different takes on it, if they're slightly different. If you own an EV and you don't have a driveway and you're using the cable cord, assuming this passes Thursday, what do people need to know? What do people need to do? Like, actionably, what do they need to do after this passes?
We are currently in the process of creating a web page on our website that will outline in very simple, easy to understand terms what people need to do.
Okay.
I think it'll be very important to kind of communicate that, since just reading the ordinance isn't the easiest thing to understand. And we've gotten that feedback already from certain residents who've read the ordinance. So we are going to kind of create almost like a guidebook on how to do this, how to do it right, who to talk to, what to do, just to make it as easy as possible for our residents. And then we'll promote that as much as we can.
When will the completion date of it?
So I have somebody in our office working on it. She has created a draft so far. I hope to have it up by the end of the week.
Okay, great. Thanks.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe that the process requires city residents to seek a permit to use these cords. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So part of the process is going to be the city residents have to apply for a permit to use extension cords to charge an EV.
Okay, thank you.
But it is a simple, the charging cord is a very simple permitting process. It honestly is essentially come in, get a manual, sign a form. So the charging cord it's a simple process, but we're going to make sure that everybody is very clear on exactly what it entails.
Okay, it will require people to come in.
Yes, you have to actually come in and sign something that says, I received this manual.
Okay.
And, yeah, get a copy of the manual, sign it.
Thank you.
Very well.
One final comment, if I might. One of the things to keep in mind regarding curbside extension cord usage is that this is a practice that is commonly done in the evening when we effectively have no parking enforcement and really effectively have no enforcement that I'm aware of. And so let's say that the process is necessary on paper. However, again, going back to the fact that curbside extension cord usage is not a viable long-term strategy, unless the city plans to dramatically expand its, parking enforcement, which I doubt is something that we're prepared to do. But again, this is another reason why an alternative solution that doesn't involve, cables crossing sidewalks and, a commercial solution that's curbside is something that's really necessary in order to solve this problem.
Thank you.
Very well. Okay. Yes, Councilmember Fields.
Thank you, Committee Chair. I guess my question is, you brought up the parking issue. It will be done at night, and it should be some type of parking enforcement. My question to the administration is, I'm sure this has already been looked at, right? So is there, do you have something planned if someone is using another person's IV charger or extension where that resident can call 911 or just the non-emergency number to let them know that these people are not to be using their charger? Is something in place?
Yes, so residents could absolutely call the non-emergency line after hours, the non-emergency police line after hours to report any incorrect usage, and then they can issue a ticket from there.
Can I follow up?
Yes, please.
When this happens, will the police be provided that information so that when they do, if that happens or when it does happen, do they have that information available so they, you know what I mean? Because sometimes they don't have it, so they may say, oh, well, we can't do anything about it. So when it comes to certain pieces of legislation or certain things that should be taken care of by WPD, just having maybe a cheat sheet or something if you get called for IV.
Sure, yeah, we'll make sure that they have that at the outset.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Councilmember Oliver, I have you on Zoom.
Yes, I am in favor of the electrical vehicle charging station. And I just want to make that point. This is not going to take place overnight. We definitely have several years, none of this. I know they're at Wawa, but it takes time to install all this stuff, but it is the way of the world. So I am in favor of installing curbside charging cords. I just want to make that note. I like to be added as a co-sponsor. I don't think it's going to affect my area anytime. I think it will affect Councilman Harley's area before. My people, we don't even have all this going on, but I do support it. Okay, thank you.
Very well. And Councilmember McCoy, I have you on Zoom. And then
Yes.
Then Vice Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. The question that I had is whether or not at some point will they find it necessary for these parking permits, in order to have the charging port, or even if they need to have a device placed on the curbside, will they find it necessary to do reserved parking? Is that something that we are going to have to anticipate?
No, we have absolutely no plans to do reserve parking.
That was my only question. Thank you.
All right. And Vice Chair Harley.
Yes. Thank you, both of you, for the research and the time that you've taken to work on this, because back in 2017 or 2018, the topic first came up to me from residents that lived in the condos at Justice and Landon. That was the first time there was a conversation that came up. We discussed it. We, meaning the Public Works Department, discussed, and back then it was really early. It wasn't too many people actually driving, EVs. So when I think about from 2017 to now, and I'm sure you have spent a lot of time around trying to get feedback and things of that nature. But my question to you is this: when I think about everything that has been discussed and what I've read, this is primarily impacting our dense communities. So for example, I represent Midtown Brandywine, Trinity vicinity. I'm not ruling out East Side. You never, you can't tell what people have in their pocket. But I'm just asking, are those the particular types of communities that this is impacting versus single home families? Because in Councilmember McCoy's district, she has single family homes that are not connected to another property. So that's what I'm trying to understand as it relates to this curbside. You're using that term, and I just wanted to make sure that those are the types of communities that will be impacted by this the most.
Yes, absolutely. It's kind of designed to get around the problem of not having a driveway or a garage. So that honestly, the idea of how to establish an electric vehicle charging infrastructure in dense urban areas is one that every large city is trying to tackle right now, from New York to Boston to Philadelphia. Nobody has quite entirely figured it out, but there have been a lot of pilot programs so far. This residential charging ordinance, as Ms. Kessel already outlined, is the fact it's a bit of a stopgap. It allows people some form of charging while that commercial infrastructure is developed. But yes, absolutely, it applies to Midtown, it applies to the Trinity vicinity, anywhere where you're dense and you just need to be able to get electricity from your home out to your car. There are still obstacles, obviously. If you won't always be able to park in front of your house. You won't always be able to get a parking space in front of your charging station, but it provides an option in the meantime. And an interesting thing that we found while talking to other cities while we've been doing our research on commercial charging stations is almost every city that we've talked to so far has had substantial uptake in the use of charging stations in low-income areas. It's something that we were really surprised about, but apparently there have been a large number of people getting EVs in low-income areas. It's a lot of people who drive Lyfts and Ubers buy electric vehicles, and especially as they get less expensive, we're going to see them more and more. So this, at least, it will allow anybody in any part of the city to charge an electric vehicle.
Okay.
If I might?
A follow-up.
Yes, please.
So I heard you mention that you are working on the process in terms of a manual, et cetera, in my head, to be perfectly honest with you, I can see a whole lot happening in different communities with different people trying to plug these cords and parking, like the communities that I mentioned, they already have these parking issues already, and now we're adding on the cords. So I'm just hoping that the process is real clear. There's consequences if you don't follow the process. So, it's not a major interruption, in the different communities, for those that don't have EVs and things of that nature. So,
yeah, absolutely. As Councilman Fields also asked, we will absolutely make sure that we speak with the police and with parking enforcement and ensure that they know what to do if anybody is, say, not, you're supposed to immediately retract the cord once you're finished charging, and, make sure that you're using the proper ADA cover. We'll make sure that they know exactly what it's supposed to look like, and that what they're supposed to do if people call and complain, that what they're supposed to do.
Oh, so
So
thank
we're-
you. Thank you. I would like to be added as a co-sponsor, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
So noted. Want to jump to public comment real quick and see if there's any comments from members of the public, either in person or virtual.
Do I count as a member of the public?
I guess so, yes, even though you're part of the working group, Ms. Castle, but
Brief
certainly
comment.
you can
I just
make
want
a
to make
comment.
sure that everyone on the committee understands that the type of charging which is permitted by this policy is not especially effective, is not an especially effective form of everyday charging for somebody who drives a typical amount of miles every day. They drive to work, to school, drive their family around. As mentioned, I just want to be very clear here. What is permitted here should really be seen as the worst form of charging that somebody could possibly seek to use. And so it's better than nothing, but it is not. It should not be seen as any form of an actual fulsome solution.
Thank you very much, Ms.
Thank you.
Castle. All right, and turning back to council members for final comments or questions. Councilmember Oliver, floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Remove my name as a co-sponsor. Just listening to the conversations. Just remove my name as a co-sponsor. This could have a lot of effects in various communities. And I think when we initially talked about this, and I spoke with Ted Blunt about this, Mr. Blunt, it was in my intentions, it was my thoughts and his intentions that it would be a pilot program, possibly down to the riverfront, under garages, and garage areas and Wawa. But when you're talking about just coming on the east side and somebody that might buy $200,000 house or whatever, somebody that may have a little bit more money and have a electric car, and they can buy a plug. And even talking to some state legislators, it was never really clarified how that would work. And listen to Councilwoman Harley as she stated, Midtown and even Northeast area, we may have 1 or 2 cars like that. And to me, I just feel a little uncomfortable saying I'm in agreement for this to go any and everywhere. It's a pilot program. It's not for everybody. Does it work? I'm in favor of, I've been in them cars, but not to hold up the committee meeting. I don't want to be a sponsor. Thank you so much.
And I have
If you could just remove my name,
yeah, we have it noted. And I have a question actually for Ms. Mergler and Ms. Castle. And because I guess the issue is, where do we go next to the city? But my understanding, and maybe it's for you, Ms. Mergler, is that we were mandated by state
Correct.
legislators to do this. So we don't actually have a choice. Like, we have to do this.
Correct.
Okay. So this was actually claimed from the state capital, and they required cities over a certain size to do this, correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to clarify that. All right. Vice Chair Harley.
Yes. So today there are homeowners that are using the court right now. We're just regulating it. Is that correct? Because I know I've seen residents, different, residents where I've seen cords
Yes,
plugged
this,
in. So I'm just wanting to make certain that this is just saying, hey, we got a regulated process. Not that they're not already doing it. People are
Yeah.
already doing this,
yeah,
correct?
correct. They weren't necessarily doing it legally, but now they are. They are, as long as they come in and sign a paper saying that they received the manual and that they are using the proper ADA compliant cord cover, and that they're retracting the cord afterwards. So essentially, you are absolutely correct. This is regulating a process that was happening in the city. And now we'll ensure that people are doing it in a way that allows both ADA compliance and safety for our residents.
Thank you.
Have you, Councilmember McCoy? And then
Okay, thank you, Chair. This question actually is to, I guess, the public comment of Ms. Castle, I believe her name is.
Yes.
When you talked about the fact this is pretty much like the least reliable form of trying to energize, I guess, fuel the electric car. Okay, so I would like to know, from perhaps Ms. Mergler, is there anything coming down the pipeline that we should be looking forward to, like federal dollars or state or whatever, when it comes to true, larger scale infrastructure to take over this whole dealing with the extension cords, or to have more use for for people to plug in?
Good question.
Yeah, so absolutely. As I discussed earlier, we are working on a policy that would allow for commercial charging stations throughout the city. So we are working on trying to create the best possible infrastructure throughout the city. Yeah, so there is also federal funding available for that. There's something called a CFI grant that just opened up. So we'll be looking into seeing if we could be competitive for that funding through our consultant Energetics.
If I might, there's also federal funds in the form of what's known as a NEVI program, which is sponsored by the federal government, wherein the state of Delaware received $18 million to create EV charging throughout the state in 3 phases. The first 2 phases are along highway corridors, but the last phase of the NEVI program is intended expressly to provide grants and funding for communities that cannot otherwise charge conveniently where they live. So there definitely is federal funding that is coming. It's unclear exactly when phase 3 is going to land, but the state has already been sent the money. It's just a matter of when DelDOT and DENREC decide to open up that funding. I'm certain that there are companies, 100% certain, that there are companies that are interested in accessing those funds to provide service in these communities.
Excellent. All right, Councilmember Spadola.
Thank you. So of the people that are currently charging their vehicles curbside, what percentage would you say are doing it that will fall under these permitted regulations?
I would say that all of them must comply. I don't know if that's your question.
No, I mean, are we permitting the reality of how people are charging their cars? Is my question.
As far as I know, yes. I
Okay.
mean, there's essentially only 2 ways to do it right now. One is to run a cord across the sidewalk, and the other is to install a charging station in the public right-of-way. And this creates a permitting process for both.
Thank you. Yeah, I was more based on your comment of this is the slowest way to do it. Or
Yeah,
not in so many words, but
it isn't especially practical for anyone who drives, say, 20 miles a day. That's if you drive less than 20 miles a day, then level 1 charging, which is what is defined by this extension cord charging, may be practical for you. But if you drive more than 20 miles a day for your daily commute, a different solution is absolutely necessary. Like the solution that is going to be permitted by the process that we're discussing will not be a suitable only solution for day-to-day fueling of an electric vehicle in the city.
Councilmember Fields.
Yes, thank you, Council Committee Chair. I have a 2-part question. So my first question is, in this ordinance, the regulations, are they what the state said you had to do for the city of Wilmington in order for these people to use these chargers? So are they in compliance with what the state is saying that the city must do?
Yes.
That's my first question. second question, can I follow up?
Yes, please.
My second question to you is, we're talking about commercial places or where the state may have different charging stations for cars that don't use the cord, so on and so forth. Who's going to be responsible? Like, who's going to be responsible for that? If Del Dot and all of them are putting these out here, is it going to be the city?
Well, that's essentially why we're taking our time on developing a policy. So
Right.
we, until we can answer those questions fully, to everybody's satisfaction, we're not going to issue a commercial charging permits or anything like that, or start installing commercial charging stations. So that's kind of why this will be a slow process over the next year or two, is figuring out exactly what's worked in other cities, what would work for us here, where do we have the proper electrification already, who would be in charge, because we have talked to a few different cities. In some cases it's the city who's in charge, in some cases it's the third party installer, in some cases it's the electrical utility. So there are complicated questions involved in this, and so none of that is remotely addressed by this ordinance. This is only the residential charging stations as required by the state legislation.
Yeah.
But long term, as Ms. Castle has alluded to, the need for, we are looking at what would that policy look like. And for us, it is absolutely trying to answer the questions that you're asking, is essentially how do you do it in a way that makes sense and ensures that responsibility and proper, due diligence over the system.
Yeah.
So
Yes, please.
Well, this is more of a statement than it is a question. We already have issues with the state trying to figure out whose side, is it the city or is it the state when it comes to the sidewalk? Is it our tree or is it their tree? Like, do you get what I'm saying? Like, who's supposed to pave the street? Is it, even though it's in the city, is the state supposed to pave it or are we supposed to pave it? So what I'm getting at here, and I hope you see where I'm going at, Ms. Castle, and Ms. Stephanie, I forget your last name, but I want us to be very clear on, who's going to be responsible, even though we are passing legislation and even though we are regulating this. When this happens, I want to make sure that not just council and administration are aware of it, but I want to make sure that the community is well aware of it and make sure that they know who's going to be taking care of what. Because that puts a lot of pressure, not just, and I don't want to say pressure, but it brings more to us as council members, more work, because we have to try to figure out who's going to take care of what. Right. So I can applaud what you're doing as far as taking your time, because a lot of things were done previously that weren't taking their time, and we're still trying to figure out, are we responsible or are they responsible, and then it's the back and forth. So that was my statement. So I want people to understand, the people that are listening, the constituents that are listening, we have issues with curbs, sidewalks, and trees, trying to figure out who's responsible for what. So when it comes to this, to the EVs, commercial wise, that is something that definitely needs to be looked at, and I want to say, and make sure a third grader can read it. How about that?
I would like to mention that there are policy and technical professionals inside the city who could assist.
Excuse me, point of order, you have to be addressed. Mr. Johnson, can you?
Well,
tell
I
us
believe Ms. Castle was answering the question.
Okay,
She's on the
okay.
panel.
She just
Indeed.
raised her hand. Has some order here, go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much. There are policy and technical professionals that are inside the city limits, and I would like to charge the city with accessing that expertise as it exists inside the city and not rely solely on expertise from outside the city.
All right. And are you
Councilman
offering
Johnson,
yourself,
may I
Ms.
make a
Castle?
statement?
I am solely a resource. I
I
think
know
that,
you're a
that
resident of the
is
city, correct?
that is yes, I am.
Okay.
But I'm not the only person who has expertise in this topic area on both the policy and technical side.
Thank you. All right. Final comments. Councilmember Oliver, I have you first. And then
Yes,
Vice Chair.
yeah, my final comment is that I was listening to Councilwoman Member Fields, and she made a lot of sense. you know, we're talking about an ordinance here. We're not talking about a resolution. And when we're talking about an ordinance, this is my opinion, we should have conversations around this ordinance with council members, so we don't come to the committee meeting and we have some unanswered questions. I mean, I know we all got some questions, I get that, but we're talking about an ordinance regarding a topic that is new. Of course, you know, I support it, the state support it, but I just think it's fair to, you know, call council members, Councilman Johnson, I'm talking about you, if you're the sponsor, so we can have a conversation, because I can see and hear that council members are asking questions that if we had a private meeting or a Zoom meeting, some of these questions can be answered. So we're not on TV like this is our first rodeo, even though it's not, because we've discussed this, you know, some time ago. But we're just taking this like so lightly, like, oh, this is just an ordinance, and this is just pertaining to charging and maintaining, you know, curbside. No, this is serious. We're talking about something that's new, charging in various districts and all districts, and I mean, installing, you know, charging stations, and we're just saying, oh, it's okay because it's a new thing coming. And I mean, it is a new thing coming, but let's have a conversation. And some of the questions that y'all asking Stephanie, she can't even answer. She's like, oh, well, you know, we're talking about this now. We haven't gotten to that. Well, why are we putting up this ordinance and we haven't even gotten to that phase? It doesn't make sense to me, some of the stuff that we do. I just had to make that statement. And this is why we have council members hear so much a negative feedback from the public, because of things like this. We can't even, we asking questions, we're not even getting the answers, and it just sounds like it's okay. I mean, I'm for, charging stations, but let's make it make sense.
So noted. The Vice Chair Harley?
Yes, thank you. I just want to make one comment before I make the comment that I raised my hand for. I think what Councilmember Oliver is alluding to is that it seems like there's still a whole lot of questions, a whole lot of ifs, a whole lot of uncertainties. That's what I got out of what she's saying, and it does feel that way. It does feel like there's a lot of uncertainties, but it has also been stated that this is a beginning, you know, of at least trying to get it started and to regulate it. So the one thought that I had as I was sitting here was that if part of this process is making sure that individuals have the right cords, et cetera, have the city thought about us providing cords to make sure that the residents that, and hear me out, that the residents, and I didn't say for free, but to make sure that residents are getting the right cord, because if part of this whole process is that I get the manual, I go off, I buy a cord, and I'm supposed to adhere to this manual, it's going to be an honor system that I'm going to go to the store to get the cord, and it lines up and it complies with what's in this manual. That's what it sounds like to me, that it's an honor system that you are relying on people to do.
So we'll still have enforcement. So if LNI or if the police come across a cord that's not being used properly, then that person will get ticketed. So that the consequences of not doing this correctly will be outlined on the webpage that we create for this.
Okay, that's all I have, Mr.
And,
Chair.
Chairwoman?
Yes, thank you, Sir Chair. I just wanted to clarify that it's not that the city is doing this just because we want to pass an ordinance. There was time that was given for us to come up with a plan. Unfortunately, that plan wasn't really clear, and what they did come up with and submit it for us to pass, because we had to be compliant by a certain time and date. Unfortunately, it did cause havoc for a lot of the residents, in the sense that not everybody has a resident where they can park their vehicle, parking lot, driveway, where these cords would not be in the road. So I understand the frustration, of council members and others that are like, well, it's not a perfect plan. We understand that, but something had to be put forward. That's why the working group was in effect. So they came up with these suggestions, and it's not even where it really is supposed to be, but it's the best that we could do to help those residents who do have a car that they need to charge in the evenings, no matter where they live. It's not a matter, we can't choose which district. If somebody buys a vehicle in any district, they need to have the same accessibility to be able to charge their vehicle. It isn't a pilot program. This is the law. It was passed on the state level, and we in the city have to comply. So I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman. And Council President Congo?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Has there been a discussion with the state to possibly give us more time so we get this right?
I'll be honest, I think that we've gotten it as right as we can. I mean, what is required of us is to have a residential permitting process. The working group was satisfied with the conclusions drawn. Ms. Castle alluded to the need for a commercial charging process, which will be the next step. But that, I think, was the main dissatisfaction that she had expressed with the legislation. But as far as, I don't know if anybody has any specific issues with the legislation currently presented with the actual residential charging process.
And Chief of Staff Washington?
Sorry, had to unmute myself. Thank you. I think Councilmember Cabrera said it best. This is a mandate of the state, and there was ample opportunity for the city to comply with this, and this is the reason why the working group was established. The administration had 7 members, and City Council had 6 members on this working group, and this is the end result of that. But in essence, we have to comply with what the state is mandating. And as Stephanie stated earlier, there will be other iterations of this in terms of expanding it and working with our consultants. But right now, this is the recommendations that was set forth, and we're just simply asking council to adopt them.
And since this is my legislation, when this was passed last year at the state level, I worked with the administration and Public Works on this. I would say in closing, the idea is that this is a step forward. That commercial stations, which to be clear is like a Wawa or like a Shell, where you're setting them up and people can buy or purchase electricity with the higher level. That's I believe what Ms. Castle is saying. That is where we need to go as a city. Right now, you can't, if you want to open one up, say on Maryland Avenue, you can't do that because there's no process for permitting. So that's our next step, is to actually allow people, or Delmarva, however we do it, to actually set up these commercial grade stations, either on the street, like normal gas station, or say in parking garages, okay? But in the meantime, we do need to give our residents some relief, as Ms. Castle said, because over the years, I've gotten requests from residents who want to put stations in, and we have to tell them, sorry, you can't, because we don't have permitting. So we at least need to handle our obligation on city council and allowing people who do want to safely get it installed by someone who's licensed to allow them to go forward with that process. And again, it's not ideal. It's certainly not ideal. I think we all agree it's not ideal, the charging stations on the ground, but we got to start somewhere for at least residents who have EVs who are doing that. Like I said, Smerger said the data shows actually in lower income areas, you have more people who are using them to help actually their own business. They have an Uber, DoorDash, it's actually a lot more efficient for them than the high gas prices. So again, I think this is a big problem, something we're gonna have to work on as city council. But I appreciate everyone, especially Ms. Castle, your time. I know the first meeting, you pulled me aside and said, hey, let's work on this, and this. And I certainly was like, okay, I want to sign you up for being on the working group. And I appreciate your time for volunteering to move the city forward, and especially you, Ms. Mergler, and also Public Works and everyone who helped work on this. So for those reasons, I believe we do need to move forward to at least get this in place as we continue working on the larger commercial grade ideas. Chairwoman Cabrera, I believe you are the chair, so at this time, I believe there would be a motion on the floor.
Yes. Motion to put forth the legislation.
So
Second.
move.
Can I get a second?
Second. Oh, I'm not on your committee.
It has been properly. Thank you. It has been, okay, has been properly moved and second. All in favor, respond with an aye.
Who's second?
I did.
Anyone opposed? Okay, it has been anyone opposed? Okay, it has been properly moved. This will be heard at, do we have the date, Councilman Johnson, as to what council
Ms.
meeting this
Ms.
will be?
Bass Knight, what meeting?
This Thursday.
Okay, this Thursday.
Okay, so
Very
this will be in the July 11th City Council meeting at 6:30 PM. Thank you for all who attended, for the comments, and for the thorough and thoughtful discussion.
All right. Thank you very much, Chairwoman, and I believe Ms. Bass Knight, the rest finance items?
Yes.
Okay, the rest are finance items. All right, so we're gonna
Thank you.
and again, thank you for the members of the public here. Appreciate the work. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 40 of City Code relating salary steps, pay adjustments, promotions, voluntary demotions, starting salaries, combined leave, and eligibility for city-sponsored benefits. I believe this is Human Resources. I see Director Barnes with us, and also Mr. Dexter. So I believe you all should come up, and actually the sponsor of this is Vice Chair Harley, so I will let her take over.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As you already mentioned, Director Barnes and Mr. Dexter are here. I would like for them to speak on it first. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harley and Chairman Johnson and other honorable council members assembled here. I'll just say at the outset that this is a very employee-centric piece of legislation. Mr. Dexter will walk through each of the items that are being amended here and the rationale for the changes that are being made. This is one of perhaps many to come as we are looking to revise our code in a number of different areas. But with that, we thank Councilmember Harley for sponsoring the legislation, and I'll ask Mr. Dexter to step through the changes that are being made here.
Thank you, and thank you, members of council. We have 5 opportunities, as Charlotte has indicated, to really increase employee satisfaction. And the first one starts with what we worked on last year as it relates to the compensation and classification study. And so this first part is really a salary step increase. And so it's bringing in alignment the recommendations that were adopted last year for the classification and compensation study, moving it from a 7-step pay plan to an 11-step pay plan. That is already enacted. We just need to codify that within the city code. The next part of that is around benefits. During the COVID pandemic, we started offering benefits on day 1 for employees. That has been something that we've consistently offered throughout the course of that up until now, and so we'd like to codify that in the code as well as a practice in alignment with many other employers around the state.
So somebody on Zoom needs to mute. Sorry, there's a little bit of feedback. That's all.
No problem.
All right, you can go forward, Mr. Nice.
The third one is around internal promotions. We currently have a process where an employee who is seeking a promotion within a higher level must receive a $500 minimum in the next salary step up. And so to make that more enticing in terms of an employee retention overall, and to address inflation, cost of living increases, et cetera, we would really like to raise that from a $500 minimum to a $2,000 minimum, making the impact more meaningful for our current employees. The fourth one relates to voluntary demotions. And so while this doesn't happen on a regular basis, we do have employees who may decide, based on responsibility or other obligations or considerations, that they might want to take a position that would be a lower level of where they currently are. And so we'd like to put some language in the code that speaks to how we would place them in the salary scale to recognize that they are in a position that's a lower level or a lower salary than where they currently are. And then lastly, around the sick payout. And so the city offers, based on your years of service and accrued leave, combined leave, payouts as it relates to what those are. And so this adjustment would move us closer to what other agencies in the state of Delaware are offering. And so those are high-level talking points to what we are looking for. I'm happy to answer any questions or go deeper as it relates to what the specific changes are in the code. But those are the 5 points that we're here to address this evening.
Okay, any comments or questions? Vice Chair?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say that between Director Barnes and Mr. Dexter, I think that they did a pretty good job with explaining the purpose of this legislation as it relates to aligning the salaries basically with the compensation study. And I don't have any more to add to it at this time. Thank you.
Ms. Bass-Knight?
Yes, I just have one question. For the for adding on the additional steps, is the amount of the salary compensation going to increase, or is it going to stay within the current steps? I would assume that the bandwidth will increase, correct?
It stays within the current steps as already outlined in the study. The only increase would be the regular cost of living increase that happens annually in the fiscal year.
Okay, so in other words, if I look at the current bandwidth now, and if that goes up to 7 steps, are you saying 11 steps is going to fit within the 7 bandwidth right now?
Yeah, so
Okay.
what we're seeking is to align the current code with what the new compensation structure is and how it's already been put into effect. And so the current code only illustrates that there are 7 steps. But we know now that we have 11 steps. And so what we're doing is just trying to mirror what we have within our compensation structures and programs to what's also in the code.
Okay, so, Mayor, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so, in other words, so the 11 steps is going to equal what the 7 steps is now. If it is of 7, what is the number currently?
The current number, so in the code, it's 7 steps.
Okay.
And so it speaks to, on an employee's anniversary date, when they move up a step, that it speaks to there only being 7.
Okay,
Right? In the compensation study that we adopted and passed last year, we increased that threshold from 7 to 11. And so now we have employees who might be in a step 8 or a step 9, but the code only speaks to 7 steps. And so what we need to do is increase that amount from 7 to 11. It's just going to mirror what we've already put into practice based on that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So, what Steve has illustrated is that last year when we came before you with the compensation study. And that compensation study took us from a 7-step pay plan to an 11-step pay plan. You adopted that, okay? However, the code still says a 7-step pay plan. So as he just illustrated, before you topped out at 7, okay? The code doesn't allow anything that says 8, 9, 10, or 11, okay? We are bringing the code in line with what the compensation study that you adopted. Otherwise, folks would be stuck at step 7, even though the pay plan goes up to 8, 9, 10, and 11. So that's all this is doing. You've already adopted the pay scale. You've already adopted the compensation plan. We're just saying it was 7 steps, now it's 11. So that range that you're talking about, Marshall, is the range that's in that 11-step pay plan. This does not increase that range at all.
okay. So, Mr.
Yes,
Chair, thank you, Director Barnes. So once again, the budget ordinance that was presented before council, that had 11 steps. So that range is going to remain the same.
Correct,
So we just, all right, thank you.
correct.
Right.
well. Any members of the public that have any public comments, questions? All right, turning it back. I do have one comment, of course. I appreciate the work of you, Director Barnes and Mr. Dexter, making this happen. And I didn't know that there was more, I guess, legislation needed to get us in line with where we need to go. And I say this is, this is often overlooked, this work, but I appreciate the work of you making sure we keep the best and brightest. So my years being on council, and I realize was just in a NPC meeting last week, and as many of my colleagues will say, every community meeting we go, the number one thing we hear about is this trash, parks, 311, other issues related to having employees and having great employees here. And so I know, at least on council, I know we're trying to, and Vice Chair Harley, make sure, you can keep the best and brightest here, because I know all the complaints we get are all tied to us just not always having full staffing complements. And we can't do our jobs on city council without you all in human resources. So we really appreciate it. And I would like to be added as a co-sponsor on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate your comments.
Vice Chair, or any other comments or questions?
No other comments, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
I would like to be added as a co.
Okay. We have Councilman Fields added as well. All right. Okay. All right. Well, this is an ordinance, so it does need to be formally voted. So this time I'll entertain an ordinance, a motion to move ordinance 24-038 out of committee to full council for a vote.
So move.
Second.
All right. It's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Ordinance 24-038 has passed and will be on a full council agenda this Thursday, July 11th. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Barnes and Mr. Dexter. All right, moving down through the list, we just have a resolution approving Public Works grant for DHSS. This is a construction grant for the Porter and Brandywine plant. Can't count this as Councilmember Oliver, but I believe Councilmember Fields is presenting for her. Okay. And we have Commissioner Williams online as well. So if you want to take the floor.
Yes,
Councilmember Fields.
I'll let Commissioner Williams speak to, or should I read the synopsis?
Well, you can just have Commissioner Williams.
Yeah, I'm going to let Commissioner Williams explain this. Thank you.
Thank you. This resolution is asking the council to authorize the Department of Public Works to accept an application from the Delaware Health and Social Services Division of Public Health for a grant in the amount of $2.4 million in change. Specifically, the grant would be used to support completing the design and the first phase of construction to incorporate the most cost-effective means of removing PFAS from the city's source water at the Port and Brandywine water plants. There's no local match required, and it's a grant.
Okay, thank you. Can you just,
Yes.
my question to you is, what does PFAS stand for? Like, what is?
So PFAS is short for what they call forever chemicals. That's sort of the term that everybody's using now. They're emerging contaminants, and recently the EPA has ruled that all water utilities have to comply with a rule of 4 parts per trillion, getting our level of PFAS down to 4 parts per trillion. Prior to that, it was at 70 parts per trillion. So we were in compliance with the 70 parts per trillion, and we are just above the 4 parts per trillion. So we're going to have to implement some significant operations and treatment facilities at our plants in order to meet the EPA goal, the EPA rule.
Okay, thank you.
Very well. Any comments from members of the public? Okay. All right. Turning it back to council. Any final comments or questions? Seeing none, this is a resolution, so it does not need to be formally voted out of committee, and I guess it will be on the agenda this Thursday?
Yes.
Okay, this Thursday, July 11th. All right, thank you very much, Commissioner Williams.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Next up on the agenda, item number 4 is a resolution authorizing the Parks and Rec Department to accept a conditional gift of funding from the Roberto Clemente League for laser grading at Woodlawn Park. I believe we have Director Smith here. Nice to see you, Director Smith. And if you could do an introduction about what this specific project, much needed project at Woodlawn Park is.
All right. This is going to allow us to accept a gift of $40,000 from Roberto Clemente Baseball League to provide support for the actual overall field, right? So although we are doing some renovations to the infrastructure, this is specific to the field to address the flooding issue that we have on that baseball field. So that's what this was, and I'm grateful that they have joined us in partnering to address the issue.
And Councilmember Bracey, I apologize. This is your piece. Is there anything you wanted to chime in on?
No, I think Director Smith hit the nail on the head. This is a great opportunity to fix a problem with that field. So we're happy that we're able to do this, and hopefully accept the funding to support the repairs.
And I would like to be as a co-sponsor, and I appreciate Director Smith for you making this happen. And this has been every season with Woodlawn Park on the west side. You know, we struggle with the rain issues, and I know more improvements are coming. You know, I know some federal dollars in play, but at least, you know, we need the field as good as we can get it. So, you know, we appreciate the work, and when we get this approved, hopefully it can get done as soon as possible, right?
Well, the grading's already done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did the grading, and it's an honor to be the face of this work. But honestly, there's a lot of people who've been championing for work done there. You'd be surprised just going there, people who are struggling with their own struggle out there cleaning and picking up. So it's an honor to be the face of all of this. But yeah, I want to give shout out to Roberto Clemente and their sponsors for allowing to partner and let us do this together, and not just watching the city do it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'll make
Yes.
a Chair. I'd just like to say kudos to Parks and Rec, and kudos to Roberto Clemente. I love them. I love those guys. Even though Chris and I share them. I have to say we share them. And I just implore them for like going out and finding other funds to make sure that their park is taken care of. And I know that they need it done. So I would like to be added as a co-sponsor as well. And again, I congratulate you as well as them for working together and showing other communities that you don't have to just depend on the city to do it. You can work with other entities that sees your vision to rebuild your community and the parks that are in there. And the city is definitely willing to work with them if they all see eye to eye, or however that part goes in the meetings that I'm not allowed in. No, but you get what I'm saying. Yeah. So I'm just really appreciative that they took it and said, this is what we need to do for us. And I hope other communities see the same thing. So thank you so much, and thank them. I really appreciate them as well.
I appreciate you saying that, and I appreciate their patience. They've been very patient and working hard on building relationships, and you're correct. It is a model for all communities to reach out and find partnerships to move their own agendas.
Absolutely.
Excellent. All right. Well, this is a resolution, so it does not need to be formally voted out of committee, and I believe this will be in the council agenda this Thursday.
Thank you.
All right. And sit tight, Director. You have one more piece.
Yes.
This is a resolution authorizing Public Works to accept a conditional gift for fencing in Kirkwood Park. So this is also Parks and Rec. So Actually, before we begin, Councilmember Bracy, is there anything you wanted to chime in on this piece?
No, not really, Chair. Just more good news, funding for repairs that are much needed in our parks. So I appreciate the great work of Parks and Rec in coordinating and facilitating, finding these funding opportunities.
Excellent. All right, and Director Smith?
This is another much-needed gift. This one happened a little different. This was really to address students at Stubbs who could walk outside of the gate and also prevent animals and people from just freely walking in. It doesn't stop you from being able to gain access, but it does make that pathway a little longer, right? So this was for the safety of our children, not only to prevent them from being able to leave out, but prevent people from having easy access to them coming in. It also addressed our exit and entrance way into the park by way of vehicle. So once again, this came to us, the original request came to us from the school and the district, and we were excited and happy to partner with them to make this happen. Both of these resolutions were not, both of these gifts were not budgeted by us. So without them partnering with us, we would otherwise not have been able to do these two. So I want to thank the school district for supporting us and my staff for doing what they needed to do to make it happen. And the children are safer.
Excellent. All right, Vice Chair Harley?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a park that myself and Councilmember Oliver share. Kirkwood Park is a park where residents from the 4th District tend to have events there quite often. As a matter of fact, they're going to be having something there this Saturday. So this is great news. Anytime that we can, get those additional funds, and as it has already been stated, from Councilmember Fields, partnership is a wonderful thing. When you think about government, we're nonprofit, we're not for profit. So all the partnerships, gifts, grants that we can get, we welcome them, right?
Yes.
Yes, so I would like to be added as a co-sponsor on this resolution. Thank you.
Very well. Any comments from members of the public? All right, seeing none, I'll turn it back to council for any final comments or questions. All right, well, this is well said, and this is a resolution, so it does not need to be formally voted out of committee, and it will be on the council agenda this upcoming Thursday. All right.
Thank you to
And
the sponsors.
yes. Thank you very much, Director. And with that, we have completed our agenda, and we will be on summer break, so please stay tuned for the August committee meeting dates for our various committees. So, Ms. Bassett, we don't have August dates yet, do we?
The next committee meeting will be September.
Okay, September, okay, all right. Well, all right, so besides any emergency or if we need to do any other important legislation, but we will be moving, yes, Councilmember Field.
Could you please be very clear when the break starts and when it ends? So
Okay.
our community could know.
Yes, so I believe our break starts after this, and we were working on legislation changes, but I believe this is our last meeting, so of the summer, pretty much July 11th, and then our next meeting in August. Vice Chair Harley may know better.
22nd.
The August 22nd is when we reconvene. So it's the month break, okay? So, we'll give more updates on as to the calendar at the upcoming council meeting. But yes, this is the last committee meeting, at least for the summer term.
And we are always available.
Yes, we are always available. Everyone here should have all of our cell phones indoor the council office chamber. So again, we appreciate everyone. Stay safe out there, especially in the heat. And please, obviously, call City Council if you need relief from the heat, if you need the fans, and also make access for the city's cooling station. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All right. Is there a second? Okay. All right. All right.
I'm not on the
Okay.
committee.
Well, it is, yes.
Second.
I will second. All right. And all those in favor? Aye. All right. The meeting has adjourned.
Thank
See
you.
everyone in September.
Thank you.
Take care,
Thank
y'all.
you.